how the supply chain contributed to $800,000 in Nike product being stolen. I waited to talk about this because I like to have a lot of information, and then I go out and I'll try to interview people and get as much of the details as I can without, overstepping my bounds. So I was able to hook up and interview a truck driver who drives and delivers to a couple of the rail yards and storage yards where the theft happened. So there's going to be interesting pictures in this. Down towards the bottom, it shows you what the rail yard and the storage yards look like over there where this theft happened. But I want you guys to stay with me because there's been a ton of incorrect information about what's happening. So you all know that thieves ran off with $800,000 worth of Nike shoes and clothing after ransacking 20 trailers. Everybody knows that by now because you've seen the videos everywhere and everybody shared that immediately. What everybody did wrong was to say that it happened at Nike, but we'll get there. A few years ago, Nike began hiring gray market analysts, and you'll see me highlight that word right here. And the gray market exists between retail, resale. It's the loss prevention aspect of any business. All companies have loss prevention professionals. With the recent disclosure of a Nike VP's son using his family relationship to build a booming resale business, I'm not even talking about who it is. You know what I'm talking about. Drake just cracked a joke. Nike has had to improve their loss prevention and gray market strategies due to internal issues. Now, they also had to improve those issues because of the things that happen here in Memphis and in Portland and other locations wherever you have a Nike facility. But with Nike, Nike's heart and soul sits in Memphis. Memphis is the distribution capital of the world. The city is the home of FedEx's hub, Nike's distribution, ASIC's distribution, companies like TJX, Marshalls, Ross, those companies. Even Louis Vuitton had a private warehouse in the city. It was unmarked, of course. It moved a few years ago. The logistics of any major company probably runs through Memphis. Warehouses dominate the commercial property landscape, and the city itself is dissected by railroad lines and highways, with every lane filled by 18-wheelers. Now, I wrote a post a few years back on why Nike keeps winning. You see it over here to the side. You can click on it. It'll be in the description. I have a link to this article that I'm reading to you. It'll be in the description. You can click through. And this is why they keep winning. Nike's Consumer Direct acceleration, which was the Nike Consumer Direct offense. I wrote a book about that. You can go to Amazon and pick it up if you want to. I'm not trying to pressure anybody. But that Nike CDA benefits greatly because of its location in Memphis. When I discussed that in this post up above, over here to the side, it kind of gets to the heart of why Memphis is so important to Nike. So those of you who are out there like, yo, Nike should leave Memphis, it's not going to happen. So get that out of your head. What does Nike's distribution in the CDA have to do with the recent theft of Nike product, which flooded StockX, GOAT, and eBay? You saw those Jordan 11s and Jordan 4s and people taking pictures of the Jordan 6s. There's been a ridiculous amount of misinformation around what took place. For years, Nike has dealt with loss prevention issues, but all retailers encounter those problems. Crimes are typically inside jobs in a matter of opportunity. For Nike, the ongoing problems with the supply chain reared its head in this recent theft. So if you're looking down over here to my side and you see this article on the 150,000, typically Nike has been hit with smaller losses of $60,000 to $150,000, right? This big ambitious theft that happened last week of $800,000 did not happen because Nike dropped the ball. It happened due to overcrowded rail yards and privately owned storage yards. Now, you can leave questions to ask me what I mean by that, but think about it like this. If you have enough money to buy property near a rail yard, you can open a storage yard and you can take what basically is called overflow. Okay? And that's when companies have too many containers and they can't bring it on their own property. So it sits in this overflow until a lot of the other containers have left the property of the business. All right, you guys got that? So Nike was a double victim of the supply chains disruptions from China and Vietnam to the ports. There's so much excess product in transit that Nike's millions of square footage around their distribution centers, you see over here to the side in the picture that's below over here, you see all of those containers outside of that Nike distribution center. It's just overwhelmed with containers. The brand Nike, they utilize what's an industry standard empty swap. Now, empty swap is in truckers' terms. You guys that drive trucks out there, you know what I'm talking about. It's the process of bringing in new containers and unloading that product, and then the trucker picks up an empty container and he does what's called an empty swap. The backup of product in rail yards led to the use of storage yards. And the timing of the Labor Day holiday weekend provided an opportunity for this big, massive $800,000 theft. Now, this is important as the supply chain is still slow on the West Coast, but it's improving due to potential strikes because of unions preparing to fight for fairer wages. This is on the West Coast, but also I'm going to read a second article here that gives you more insight. I want you guys to be as informed as possible. Let's not go out. Everybody's so quick to try and do stuff fast as opposed to actually doing it right. So I just want to make sure you have the correct information. So the fight on the West Coast for fair wages, and the East Coast and the southern ports are now being congested. Now you top that off with more closures of facilities in Asia due to continued issues around COVID. It's forcing Nike to use overflow facilities. Now, like I said, I'm going to show you pictures down here of what those facilities look like. Now, what does this mean, and how does it counter the commentary about what happened? You've seen on Hypebeast and other sites, they keep saying that Nike got hit and Nike didn't have cameras. This is not true at all. These thefts are not happening on Nike property. This was not a Nike loss prevention issue directly. Not saying that people are not on the property doing things at Nike, but this is an issue that will continue to happen as the West Coast ports are finally evening out and freeing up, but they're going to possibly go on strike. But the East Coast and Southern ports are now facing the same issue. So here are the facts about what happened. Let's go. Here are the facts. The theft did not occur on Nike's property. The theft took place at a storage yard near Nike's Shelby Drive and Lamar facility. That facility has one security person at the gate and one rover. Now, I'm going to scroll down and show you, this is a rail yard, okay? And I'm going to get to the bolts here in a second. So let me keep reading instead of scrolling down and giving you these pictures. According to the person I interviewed, the crime took place at 1 a.m. in the morning. The trucks were at an overflow parking lot. Remember I said storage yards, rail yards. Rail yards are protected. They have rail yard police, and those police have basically the same kind of power as a regular police person. They are patrolling rail yards. These things did not happen on the rail yard. They happened in an overflow parking lot, which is basically a storage yard, because Nike can't accept the delivery. And because they typically do what I said, which is an empty swap. But Nike's so backed up. If you look up here in this picture, right? And this isn't a picture of one of the facilities in Memphis. Memphis has 3 Nike facilities, 3 big major Nike facilities. One's a little bit outside of Memphis in Byhalia. But they're so backed up with all of these containers, they can't do the empty swaps. So those Nike trucks were placed on a private storage yard. Now, you have people that are saying the locks were cut. There aren't any locks. Containers use bolt seals. All right? Bolt seals, and this is the irony, they can be bought at any truck stop. So if somebody's not doing their job properly and looking at the bolt seal, people can get away with taking things out, and they can go to a truck stop and buy a bolt seal. Now, that looks like a piece of plastic, but it's not. There's a carbon plate or a carbon tube inside of this plastic seal. But this seal is basically a one-use identifier quickly able to show if a container has been tampered with. So the people that did what they did at Nike with the $800,000, They could have pushed those doors back closed instead of throwing things everywhere. And they possibly could have gotten away with it completely if they had closed the doors. Now I'm sitting up here feeling like I'm telling people how to steal. That's not the point. What I'm explaining is that the bolt seals are not locks. Once they're broken, that's it. It can't be used, but they typically have an identifier on the bolt seal. All right. According to this truck driver that I interviewed who works near that storage yard, it's not only Nike having issues with containers being tampered with prior to arrival at facilities. There are a number of trucks arriving with partial loads and replaced bolt seals. This stuff is happening everywhere, and I'm going to expand this discussion briefly by going into another article, but I want you to see these pictures. That is the bolt seal on a container. It's not padlocks. Bolt seals can't be reused and carry unique identifiers. Many trucks are arriving to facilities with incorrect bolt seals. This is the rail yard where they offload the things from the train and they move them over to the trucks. All right. So, and this is BNSF rail line. Over here is a private storage yard. Now, you notice all of the trees at the back and all of the containers in different areas. These things are offloaded in some instances from the trucks onto the ground, and then another truck comes back and picks it up and takes it out to a facility. But that's a pick of a Memphis storage yard. And if you see how this thing is made, it is nearly impossible for this yard to be monitored by two people. And you see how big and broad it is. All right. So that's a private storage yard. But this is the big issue. So let's continue. And you see this article that says Nike's recent theft issues could happen again on September 16th if a rail strike begins. And this is very important, man. What we hope is it does not happen. So there's a looming possibility of a strike by unions representing more than 90,000 workers at the nation's freight railroads. And this is very worrying. So this is the fact, right? This is a sneaker industry video, and my site is Sneakers and Lifestyle, but this issue is big for the entire country. So when Nike experienced that $800,000 theft, that crime underscores an overlooked aspect of how the supply chain is shaping consumer and criminal behavior in port cities. And this is why I said people blaming Memphis. Oh, Memphis is a good city. It's like really irritating for people to keep like saying that kind of stuff. And yeah, every city has problems, but when people target Memphis as a problematic place for Nike, I'm going to give you a couple of things out here, okay? And I'm going to click on these articles so you can see it. And here you have LA. LA is a port city. Long Beach in particular is a port city. When the trains come in, you have people that are going to the trains as they're parked, and they're pulling packages and boxes off of the trains. This is Los Angeles. This is not Memphis. So I'm stressing here that the criminal behavior that's happening is not only in Memphis. Now, let's go to another port city from Los Angeles to Miami. And you have this year, right? A restaurateur has to offer a reward for a shipping container stolen, and it's valued at $200,000. Miami is a port city. You hear Rick Rosin, which is cocaine, but that's a completely different thing. But you hear him talking about the port of Miami. Any location where containers are delivered are dealing with increased and targeted crime. The sneaker industry side of it happens to be tied to Memphis with Asics and Nike, both having these prominent warehouse locations. So the president, a couple of months ago, created a special committee to help with negotiations between unions and the National Railway Labor Conference. That committee was basically giving a cool down period, and that cool down period expires on September 16th. Today is the 12th. Memphis is already inundated with containers at both rail yards and overflow facilities. The rail yards in Memphis have their own police forces, but if the dispute between these unions creates a situation where the police are included in potential strikes, Nike and other companies may find that the $800,000 theft was just the beginning. This is extremely important and something to watch for in the upcoming weeks. So sneaker culture, if you're out there paying attention and looking at this stuff, what I hope is that you are educating yourself and understanding what's happening here. condemning and blaming Memphis for being a bad place. You know, man, every city has its problems, man. I love Memphis, and I'm here. I ain't going anywhere. I enjoy the city, and that's me coming from San Diego to Memphis. Memphis is a good city. Nike's not going anywhere. They just built a brand new facility about 45 minutes away from Memphis in Byhalia. This problem is happening because of overcrowding, and it's also happening because the rail yards sit trains or they park them in neighborhoods, and theft simply happens. Like I said, Miami, a whole container stolen worth $200,000, and you can find these articles everywhere. LA, the railroad lines littered with pilfered packages. It continuously happens, and I'm hoping everybody understands that. I'm going to wrap this up. The links are in the description. I know this was long. I don't apologize, man. I'm trying to give information, and I hope you appreciate it. That's it for today, and I will see you guys on the next one. Peace.